Hi, this is Ernest Thiessen. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to contribute to CRRIC's work in Bangladesh, promoting peace in Myanmar. My team at Smartsettle has spent over 3 decades developing negotiation and collaboration systems, and in recent years we've begun applying these tools directly to peacemaking. We're now proposing to apply this unique conflict resolution process in Myanmar, a process that helps parties move from conflict to voluntary optimized consensus. It's a way of showing that gain for one side doesn't have to mean loss for another. Dr. Kausar Ahmed asked me to take a few minutes to explain how the Smartsettle process works. Here's a quick overview of the Smartsettle process, summarized in 7 key steps. Identify the stakeholders. Document their common ground and interests in a single negotiating framework. Create a comprehensive model that lets parties exchange complete proposal packages. Describe preferences so a neutral site can use that information to generate fair suggestions. Reach a baseline agreement. Capture any remaining value still on the table. Arrive at an optimized consensus, a result that feels efficient and fair for everyone. In our simulations so far, we've modeled 6 key stakeholder groups, representing the main voices in Myanmar's peace landscape. To simply explain the Smartsettle process, it is helpful to think of these stakeholders in 2 broad clusters: the current state and security actors and the Reform Coalition. Between them lies a chasm, symbolizing a conflict that has raged for more than 70 years, one of the world's longest-running civil wars. Billions have been spent, yet peace remains elusive. The last major peace process in Myanmar, from 2012 to 2021, cost over $100 million. Despite that investment, results were disappointing. At best, a fragile ceasefire. Traditional negotiations typically tackle one issue at a time and rely on compromise. Solving conflict by meeting halfway often leaves huge value on the table. We are proposing a new way forward, a structured, interest-based approach that converts adversaries into collaborators by showing them that gain for one need not be another's loss. Traditional compromises can end up anywhere, favoring one side or the other, and without clear guardrails, fairness is left to chance, and trust easily breaks down. Many negotiations never reach the efficiency frontier. Even a reasonably fair compromise can still leave tremendous value untapped. Smartsettle Infinity helps negotiators reach that frontier, using algorithms that identify the outcomes, maximizing fairness and joint gain. In our Myanmar model, we estimated peace for the whole country could yield about $22 billion per year. To validate that estimate, we consulted the Institute for Economics and Peace under Michael Collins, whose independent assessment found that Myanmar's annual conflict losses are closer to $50 billion. These numbers confirm what we already believed. Peace is not only moral, it's economically irresistible. At the heart of our process is a single negotiating framework, a living document that captures all issues and interests. We organize these issues under 5 strategic peace lines, developed with Rotary peace champion Maria Cristina Cifuentes. Each line bundles related issues and builds upon the previous one, from restoring basic safety to building capable institutions, ensuring human dignity, delivering shared prosperity, and sustaining learning over time. Together, these 5 lines form the backbone of the single negotiating framework, guiding stakeholders from crisis to collaboration. Within each line are issue categories to be negotiated. For example, under human security and community resilience, we find several closely related issues. Peace in the Rakhine begins with verified safety. A credible plan must first establish ceasefire and de-escalation mechanisms, guarantee safe humanitarian corridors, and strengthen local resilience systems that communities can trust. These actions create the foundation on which all other peace lines depend. Through collaborative dialogue, stakeholders can explore multiple ways to resolve each issue to everyone's satisfaction. For example, the ceasefire issue could be resolved in several ways, from localized humanitarian ceasefires to nationwide frameworks with local verification cells, or ceasefires linked to humanitarian access, buffer zones, or economic re-engagement clauses. Regardless of which option gains consensus, stakeholders will want to define it carefully by specifying what happens first, how risks are prevented, and how results are verified. That disciplined approach, sequencing, safeguards, and verification, turns promises into measurable progress and creates trust through structure. Facilitated by trained mediators and guided by AI, the framework evolves through collaboration, growing more realistic with each iteration and ready for serious diplomatic use. The document produced by this process fully represents the negotiation problem, and according to Charles Kettering, also half solved. Once the framework is mature, we move to the bargaining stage. Each stakeholder refines its private preference model, its real priorities and trade-offs. The result of this transformative dialogue represents a comprehensive Marshall Plan that the parties wish to implement, formalized by fully resolving the single negotiating framework. Now, let's review how the Smartsettle bargaining process plays out in satisfaction space. This graph assumes that a comprehensive single negotiating framework has been created, and each party's preferences are well represented, known only to the Smartsettle Infinity neutral site. The stage is set for the integrative bargaining phase of a Smartsettle negotiation. The animation here will show how the bargaining phase works for two hypothetical parties, the security and state actors and the Reform Coalition. The Reform Coalition want an outcome as close to the top as possible, and security and state actors want an outcome that is as far to the right as possible. Clearly, they will need to settle for something less than the maximum for each party, but each party will not agree to anything worse than the status quo, so we've labeled that point as 0-0. In game theory, the status quo is also called the Nash equilibrium if it's a place where decision-makers get stuck and have no incentive to move to a better place, even if that better place exists. This is especially serious if the Nash equilibrium is dangerous. The status quo levels, together with the efficiency frontier, define a zone of possible agreement. But each party also has a minimum level of satisfaction that they would be willing to accept. These levels define a zone of likely agreement. The Smartsettle process proceeds as follows. Parties are encouraged to exchange optimistic proposals that represent somewhat more than they would consider fair, so that they still have some room to concede, but not so much more that the other party is offended. In this example, neither party would accept the other party's optimistic because they are both outside the zone of possible agreement. But Smartsettle can generate suggestions that fall between the optimistic proposals. Some of these packages fall in the zone of possible agreement and may be acceptable to the parties. The suggestions most likely to become an agreement are the ones that are above the target levels. Parties reach a baseline agreement at the end of a session if they have all accepted the same package. Finally, Smartsettle generates an improvement to suggest a fair solution on the efficiency frontier. This last step invokes our signature algorithm, Maximize the Minimum Gain, providing parties a way to escape the Nash equilibrium and reach a fair and efficient solution on the efficiency frontier. The Smartsettle process works for almost any formal negotiation that you can imagine between any number of parties. This process just described stands in stark contrast to earlier efforts costing more than $100 million that couldn't bridge the divide. We now have the opportunity to show that structured collaboration can achieve what decades of conventional negotiation could not. Lasting peace isn't only the end of conflict, it's the beginning of trust, cooperation, and shared prosperity. We invite you to help us prove that structured collaboration can achieve what decades of conventional negotiation could not.